Welcome everybody. This is Butcher of Wall Street here with Mark Faulk. He is the producer, writer, and actor of the documentary film, The Wall Street Conspiracy, and he's working on a new documentary right now called Financial Terrorism in America. Thanks very much for being with us, Mark.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I will correct you. I was the associate producer. I don't want to piss off the producer of the first film, Christina Copeland. That was her. She was a producer of that. So yeah, I was the writer. I think I'm credited as field director, meaning I did most of the interviews and actually pieced it all together and wrote it and all that. So yeah, and we did that with the hope that at that time, and I think that finally came out a little bit after the collapse of 2008, and we were in the middle of editing
Mm.
as the collapse happened. So it was free, it was grab a camera and go down to Wall Street, and watch the protest, which was crazy to see it firsthand. But it turned what should have been a film to warn people of what we believe was going to happen into a forensic study or an autopsy, of what did happen. So and frankly, I was shocked, and I've told people this before, to find out 15, nearly 20, well, 20 years later, since I've been involved in covering the issues, um, that's still going on. And if anything, more sophisticated and worse than it was 20 years ago. It's phenomenal. I don't know why that shocked me, knowing what I know about greed and government, but it did shock me, when the GameStop thing blew up in AMC and all. So
How was that back in '08 when you guys were working on Wall Street Conspiracy, right? '07, '08, and you guys had been talking about this and literally creating a documentary about how this is hurting people to see the actual collapse happen and then the Occupy Wall Street protests and the people out there that were hurt. Like, what the hell was that like, man?
I mean, so I'm old enough that I was around in 1968. I was 12 years old at the time. I saw the ugliness that happened then, RFK assassination, Martin Luther King assassination, Malcolm X,
Mm-hmm.
that Kent State, all of these, Vietnam, all these crazy things. Nixon getting on a plane and just flying away and going, I'm out, all that crazy shit. And at the time, I don't know. It makes you angry, but part of the time it's almost like being in awe of
Mm-hmm.
a natural disaster. Like if you walked upon a volcano erupting, it's dangerous and people, but you're also like, wow, I'm seeing something that I can't even process properly. And I think there was a degree of that. I wrote a ton of pieces back then. I put a few on my newer website that I don't use that often, but I need to, redstaterevolt.com. So there's five or six old pieces there, and I'm going to pull up those eventually and start posting them. And the reason I'll do that is because the you change the date. It's almost like Bernie Sanders. I watched a thing of him, that someone pieced together that basically said, if y'all think that he's, a politician, here he was 40 years ago, and he's saying, whatever it is, 50% of the wealth is owned by 10% of the richest people. Fast forward a few years, 80% of the wealth is owned by, and now he's like, three people own half the wealth in the entire fucking
That's
world.
fucking wild.
So yeah, yeah. So it doesn't change. That fraud is still here, and and to the point of income inequality and wealth inequality. And we talked about this pre-show. Um, Wall Street it's the weapon, and like you said, it's the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the villain itself. It's not an entity. There's always people behind the curtain. pushing the buttons and making sure that it's, we say corrupt, they say functioning in just the way it was designed to function
They say efficient
for their,
markets, right?
yeah, it's all your interpretation. Are you there to just tilt it in your direction? And they think that's a game that they win, and that makes us all losers. But in reality, no, that's a game where you went out, you see these documentaries now on Netflix and on ESPN about, it goes all the way back to the Black Sox scandals where they're rigging the games, and that's what's been going on for really since the before the 20s. But when we repealed the Glass-Steagall Act in the late mid to late 90s, that opened the door for the level of corruption that we have now in the stock market. I think that
Yeah.
we kept it just barely in check for about 5 decades, and now it's not. Now it's just so out of control that I don't know if it's fixable without some type of seismic collapse or something that happens, or a flat out, um, revolt from the people. And I always believe that. That's I got involved in Occupy Wall Street when that happened here, and spent a little bit of time in New York doing it. Got put on the terrorist watch list specifically, I believe specifically for the Wall Street stuff that I did. I mean, and I say that because I found out as I was getting on a plane to go to a showing of the film in at Brooklyn College, and was told, they weren't supposed to tell me that, but was told you're on the terrorist watch list. So for 15 years, every time I flew, I had to go 2 or 3 hours early,
So
knowing I was
basically, the fat cats, big money due to your views and your discovery and exposure of their corruption on Wall Street with the documentary Wall Street Conspiracy had you put on the terrorist watch list for TSA and
yeah,
Homeland Security.
yeah, due to my inability to shut up.
Sounds like we got a common theme going on here between you,
Yeah, yeah,
myself, and everybody else watching this right now. And I think a lot of these people are kind of like you in the sense that they don't give a shit anymore. They're ready to speak up. They're ready to have an
yeah,
actual retail revolution. I think
yeah,
that's a lot of what's going on now with stocks like AMC, GameStop, and a lot of these other meme stocks, even precious metals and silver and gold, and people come to the realization that these these physical precious metals are real money compared to the fucking toilet paper that we have here
yeah,
called the U.S. dollar and the fiat currency.
yeah.
And I think the people are really starting to come into these conclusions. How do you compare the Occupy Wall Street movement of '08 to what we've seen recently with AMC, GameStop, MMTLP, BBY, and other recent scenarios?
Yeah, I would say so. Around the time I began, which was 2004, and I had done some investing a little bit 1999 leading into 2000. That mini crash that we had in 2000, which was pretty ugly, kind of decimated me, and it made me realize that the market was not functioning in a not just a healthy way, but a appropriate way. It
Right.
seemed manipulated. Darren Saunders in the first film was saying like, "There's too much action. There's too much." You just start getting this feeling like, "Well, this isn't right." The basic law of supply and demand, which is what should dictate whether stocks succeed or not, and the economy, all of that. That's what should drive prices, not a artificial manipulation that we began to become aware of in 2004. But then the reason I was brought on as the writer, I interviewed for that film, and they didn't really know what to do with it. It's a complicated topic. And then I was brought in. I had written a book called The Naked Truth, Investing in the Stock Play of a Lifetime. That was the slogan for a company called CMKM Diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote that book, was hired to write that book, dug into it, found out that it was just the company was destroyed from the inside out. That company turned out to be a fraud from day one. So there's these different levels of manipulations, and at some point today we'll get into MMTLP a little bit because it's similar, except that I'd say it's more like Eagle Tech from the film, because Eagle Tech had a sincere CEO who came up with a really good idea, decided to take it to market, was told, hey, you can raise money in the stock market and then that'll help you succeed. And then he was manipulated by the very people he brought in and trusted.
Oh,
And
shit.
I believe that's what happened with MMTLP. It's very similar in that way. So,
Yep.
um, for people who haven't read that book, it's still, I'm just handed a
What's
copy
it
of
called?
it.
Show it to us if you got a copy. The Naked Truth, is it?
This might actually be the very first one they made because the cover's too dark.
Hold it up. Let me get
It's
a good look at that.
it's The Naked Truth, Investing in the Stock Play of a Lifetime. The back of it, I put this on it because it was fun. They got this as a fax. So in a second, I'll tie all that to how has it changed. The people who were trying to uncover it, they were faxing death threats to them. So
So
that'll let you
technology
know.
changes, but
Yeah, back in the day, things have changed. Here we go.
the
Here's a
more
better one.
things change, the more they stay the same, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But what changes is the ability to harm people and the mechanisms and the weapons. But on
Yep.
this, I put this on the back and it says, promise, if it is proven that the CMKX thing has been a well orchestrated scam, those responsible will be hunted down. They named some people. Urban Cassavant was the guy who was the CEO. Perfect villain name, crazy guy out of Canada who was just a con artist, will be hunted down and shot to death. So this was that's the actual death threat that was sent by fax back in probably 2005 or 6 or something like that.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah. And when this once we get the project that we're working on now back on solid ground, we'll talk in a little bit about why we are stalled,
Hmm.
which I'm really fucking frustrated about. Pardon my
Understandably so.
that word is French, but you
Oh, by
know.
all means, this is a channel for adults, my friend. So you knock yourself out there. Somebody's actually saying that they remember you during the CMKX. They hear Tribal Peace says, I remember you during the CMKX days. Can you fill us in, for those of us that don't know about CMKX, just briefly about what was going on?
Yeah, you mean condensing down the 400-page book in small font?
No, no, don't give us the synopsis, but just give us an
Yeah.
idea of what was going on. Like, what is CMKX to those that don't know?
So it was a penny stock, which adds some things that are phenomenal that we keep learning as we go along, is that there are certain parts of the stock market that the SEC and FINRA and everybody will just go, yeah, that's a Wild West, buyer beware.
Yeah,
In
talking
other
about the
words, we
OTC.
don't even, yeah, if it's a
Hmm.
publicly traded company, you should be regulating it in a proper way, not just in a way where they go, oh, that's ugly, let's shut that company down, which is generally what they do. They
Hmm.
they blame the company, and shut them down. So CMKX was supposed to be a diamond mining company that got the mineral rights to a bunch of property surrounding where De Beers had done mineral rights in Canada. Turned out that De Beers had good property. Maybe CMKX had some decent claims, but they never drilled a fucking well. Never. I think they did core samples,
Hmm.
uh, but ultimately, they made money by selling stock. They eventually sold 703 billion shares of stock, of
703 billion.
billion of actual shares that were run through the transfer agent and the company. So this
Oh
was the
wow.
company doing that. And that's why people thought that it was a naked shorting scam because they still thought the CEO was on their side. Nobody knew how many shares were out there. So essentially, what happened with CMKX is as it began to become exposed, I did research, so did an attorney that was suing on behalf of the shareholders, so did a few shareholders. And we eventually found out that the transfer agent, an attorney named Roger Glenn out of New York, he was the one just signing off on it like the toilet paper you were just, showing us. And at some point they were even forging stock certificates. So literally, yeah, exactly. So literally making counterfeit stock on paper and just issuing that shit like it did. But then to take that a little bit further, at one point they finally said, okay, the stock has been halted. We're going to ask all the shareholders to, we're going to do a cert pull. We're going to ask all the shareholders to go to your broker, get your paper stock certificate. And it eventually got shut down, and they were right at, just under that 703 billion. They accounted for almost every share. But then all of the brokers just went radio silent. They just said, and they came up with, and I'll find that article and post it at some point. It's probably on a damn hard drive that I have, and that's why I haven't done it. But I did a thing one time that was a top 10 broker excuses for why we couldn't, your cert was lost in the mail, the transfer agent did, it was just excuses. And that's where it began to look like MMTLP and the companies that led into that. Um, so on top of the fact that they issued these 700 billion shares, yes, it became like just like air,
Hmm.
it's like, well, we don't have to deliver any. There's so many shares, they'll never keep track of it. So to this day, I still strongly believe that there were over a trillion shares
Wow,
and
I
maybe
believe it.
as many, yeah, and maybe as many naked counterfeit or naked shorted shares as there were legitimate shares. And so they would say, okay, well, we're showing that whatever the, brokerage is, you have a billion shares out to shareholders. And then you go to Seed and Company and it would say, oh, wait, you only have a third that many. So how are you going to deliver the shares?
Yeah,
And
and
and they
seeing
couldn't.
company's got no answer, of course. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I ended up writing about that. I researched it for about a year. Turns out that it was corrupt from the inside out. Even the CEO was corrupt in that one.
Hmm.
We tied the handful of crooks that he dealt with in um, to over $1 billion worth of fraud and 100 penny stocks. So all these other penny stocks that were out at the time, they were making them up and they would do these fake deals between each other. Oh, look, now we own part of a gold mine, and then each time it would have a clause that said, well, if you don't make X number of payments in X amount of time, the gold mine goes back to Ed Donow was this guy's name.
Hmm.
He made a deal, I found out later, because his wife, he left his wife house in Vegas cleaned out and hired a crew of Hispanic workers from Home Depot to load his shit up, and they forgot to load up his second set of books in the garage that was in a box up.
Oh,
So
so they caught him through his dirty cooking the books. His
except
second
they
set of
didn't
books.
because he had already, according to his ex-wife, had already made a deal with the FBI and the DOJ. So
Wow.
he walked, and it turned
What a
out
fucking scumbag.
I believe he was the mastermind, but he walked away from it, So, but anyway, among these people, we were like, well, hell, it looks like 8 of these companies are at the same address. That's a little weird. And we go out to Vegas and we thinking we're gonna find a bunch of shitty little 100 square foot suites, you know. No, no, no. It's a strip mall and they're PO boxes.
Oh, no kidding.
So they just didn't exist. Those companies just didn't exist. And I would say that, again, MMTLP is different, and that I think George, and I could never pronounce his last name
George
right,
Palicaris.
Alakaris. I had a good conversation. One of the people who is one of the really good dedicated activists said, "Hey, he wants to have a talk with you. We talked a couple of weeks ago. I absolutely believe, and the evidence is there, that he was sincere in what he was trying to do." And he got conned. And people who have watched the first film, the Wall Street Conspiracy film, that's almost exactly like Rod Young and Eagle Tech. He
I
had a
yeah.
viable concept. You bring people in the hope that they're going to help you, and instead they destroy and rob you from the inside out.
Yep.
And you trust them because you're not a finance guy. You're a guy who came up with a great idea, or a woman who came up with a great idea. And they go, hey, you just go work on your product. We'll be over here taking care of business. And yet, boy, do they take care of business, you know. So ultimately, that company goes down. Everybody loses everything. Tons of money has been put into it. Um, the book comes out. I'll probably at some point, if I, have time, write a follow-up to it, because when the book came out, the book then ended up being used to help indict about, I think, ultimately 14 or 15 people in that fraud.
Wow.
Uh,
That's massive.
yeah, and it was interesting. It was like I said, I wrote one article going, called Financial Terrorism in America, which is where the title of the new project came from, in 2004, March 19th. I remember it because it was the anniversary of this, 1 year anniversary of the beginning of shock and awe in Iraq. So that's when I put my website out there. And, you know, it just kind of turned out that what I thought was a hyperbolic title to an article that before the term clickbait existed, it was probably really kind of clickbait to get people to read it. Bunch of people read it, and then
You
it
were
just
not
turned.
wrong.
And yeah, no, and it turned out, if anything, it was understated.
Oh, very
Yeah,
much so. Hold that book up one more time for people that are interested in learning more about CMKX and the 100 OTC companies that were manipulated there, and the hundreds of billions of shares that were created. The naked
and
truth.
there were thousands of companies, and that's through this. That's where I met. That's where I met Wes Christian. That's where I met John O'Quinn just once when he was interviewed. Darren Saunders, and it was a very odd, a guy named Dave Patch, who was an actual. When we say it's not rocket science, he was a rocket scientist. He designed jet airplanes, and so he was
Yep.
brilliant. He would put together the data. Darren was the guy, and it's in the first film, where he goes, "Hey, I'm gonna." I think it was, Dave. Yeah, it was Dave Patch who said, "I'm gonna put together a rally on Wall Street, and we're gonna." And he got a truck and a little sound system, and he said, "I would get up there and talk, and nobody would listen. I'd be like, hey, there's a problem on Wall Street." And he's like, Darren shows up. That's the first time he met him. You give him the mic. He's like, they're fucking ripping you off. They're taking your money. And
Yes.
a crowd would gather around because he had that Brooklyn charisma, you know.
Absolutely.
And
You,
that's where I came up with the term. I just jokingly called us the Dirty Dozen one day because it was a very diverse, and at the time, Patrick Byrne was involved with it.
the
And of
Overstock
course,
CEO, former.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And Robert Shapiro, who to this day I very much admire because he stood on his ideals, and as an economist, he stood on his data. He said, I don't care that everybody else thinks I'm crazy. The data and uh, my own very logical, rational research is showing me that this is real. And that's the things that confirmed what we sensed instinctively. We watched things not operating right. It's like your car and you're driving like this isn't something's not sounding right. Well, it may not break down until 2 months later down the road, but your instincts tell you something's wrong, and the things you're aware of. But then when other people start going, oh yeah, I can confirm this, Wes Christian and John O'Quinn from the perspective of attorneys, from the legal perspective, Robert Shapiro from the economist, nuts and bolts perspective of it,
Hmm.
and another guy that approached me, John Harmer, who was the lieutenant governor under Reagan in California, and I think a state legislator there as well, and eventually went to Washington and worked with Senator Bennett back in the day. He approached us and said, "Hey, we're going to take this to Congress, and I'm putting together the package, and we're going to try to do a subcommittee hearing about naked short selling." And this was 2005. It was the first time as I got that email where I went, oh, fuck, somebody's reading this shit. Somebody
Yes.
who, you know,
It's getting
people
through.
in high places are
Yeah.
reading this. And, so then I'm like, yeah, maybe I should act better. But no, I mean, if we were blunt and we told the truth, he put that together and he said, by the way, we're running off multiple of your articles, and every package to every person in Congress has those in the package. And would you be willing to come and testify? So I'm like, I mean, yes. Secondly, what the fuck, but yes, I would. Eventually, it just gets killed. A big Dateline special that was supposed to expose the whole thing just gets killed time after time after time after time. And every time we think there's a breakthrough, that giant, ultra rich hand, not the hand of God, the hand of greed, came
Hmm.
down and backed down our efforts. And so if we fast forward that, so yeah, eventually that book ends up getting used. I end up in a meeting in Las Vegas with the attorney that was representing the shareholders, the guy who was the when the CEO fled back to Canada, left the scene of the crime, he handed it over to one of his true believers. That's the guy, his name was Kevin West, great guy. He was the guy who started digging into the records and went, "Oh shit,
Like, this is
we've
a
all,
problem.
yeah, on every level." So we end up eventually in Las Vegas at the DOJ with two IRS representatives. There's a task force, two DOJ, two FBI, and two SEC members. So eight, two from each agency, sitting in this big conference room in Las Vegas at the DOJ headquarters, explaining to them how they can try this case. That attorney's name was Timothy Vasquez, Vasquez. I don't know if he's still with the DOJ. He was good. He went into that. We've convinced him, dust off this criminal investigation that seemed to just stall and go nowhere, that this is viable. He took it on himself to do the right thing, and that's what led to the criminal indictments. I talked to him around the time of Occupy, which was probably about a year after the indictments came down, and we helped him. I was on the phone with him every week for a while trying to put that together. And I said, so hey, what did they do? Did they put you in charge of the division to go after stock fraud? Because that would be amazing. Like, as an example, I've had the Canadian, what are they, the Mounties
Yeah, the
in
Royal
Canada,
Mounties Police.
Royal Mounties in Canada, bought 10 books at one point
Whoa.
because they said, well, we want to, because it's a roadmap. I kind
Yeah.
of laid out a roadmap. Here's one version. The beginning of some of the sections have some articles from my website as well. So I tried to lay it out. Here's how it happens, A to Z. And he did a great job. And in my mind, I'm like, that guy right there. Put him in charge of this from a criminal perspective, DOJ, and he will help clean up the market. And he said, yeah, no, I'm in the reserves and I'm being deployed to Afghanistan. Now, why would you do that? Like, I mean, pardon me for sounding suspicious.
I think it's completely valid to, have a theory as to why anybody who steps up, anybody who starts shining a light on the corruption gets washed away, gets shipped overseas, gets shut down, gets put on terrorist watch lists just
Yep.
for, calling out the truth and the realities of what they're seeing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I don't think that's a coincidence whatsoever. We've seen that kind of thing happen time and time again. Uh, you know, how would you? So, what's going on now with Wall Street? With obviously the Wall Street conspiracy is the documentary you guys were working on, and in the literally when the 2008 GFC occurred, and you put it out not long after that. Uh, how are things going now with the new documentary series you guys are working on called Financial Terrorism in America? Why don't we fill the people in here and give them a heads up as to the work that you've done so far and where we
Yep.
stand with that
Okay.
series?
Uh, and I'm gonna choose my words carefully here. So first round of funding happened. 3 or 4 people put in, decent chunks of money, and it's people who are involved in one way or another in the battle. They just want to see, because in the end, um, in my mind, everybody benefits the more we can expose and pull the curtain back and go, this is a problem.
Exactly.
And now that we have things like some of the limited documentary series, which I love that platform. I think it's a good way to do it because you get to break the story down into sections, and the streaming services. So keep in mind, when the first one came out, there was no Netflix in the form that it exists now. There was no, 10 networks all streaming documentaries
Right.
into your, you made it in the theaters or you didn't, and documentaries didn't ever do well in the theaters, but here we are in a whole different world. um so we did, I want to say, we did 20 interviews in a very short period of time. So we flew into with a very small crew. I have a excellent um, cinematographer and editor that I've worked with for probably about a decade now. Um, our line producer and a guy who did audio and then some really great drone shots, which I found out why he's so good at it. Turns out he's a gamer,
Oh,
and
that explains it.
yeah, flying a drone is like is yeah. So really great crew, and they're both kind of young in my mind, 30ish, with the other guys even younger, but very dedicated, enthusiastic, and professional. So we shot from Florida up through Georgia, caught some there, up into Washington, D.C., got Rob Shapiro there, a couple of more. Then eventually ended up in New York and even upstate New York. So we filmed all up and down the East Coast, and then we filmed up and down the West Coast, mostly just in California for that round. So went really well. I want to say that after watching so many of the documentaries and films about GameStop
Hmm.
and quote unquote dumb money
Right.
that became a thing, I met some of the most intelligent, educated, and dedicated people who are activists in this realm, more than I could imagine. And I don't want to dog the characters that they highlighted in the GameStop thing, but some of them either purposely dumbed down what they were doing, but they wanted, like I said, they wanted to be like Hey man, I was in my basement and somebody said I should buy GameStop, and I thought, fuck, cool. I smoked a joint and I spent half of my check on GameStop. That's the impression they want people to have, but that's not the reality. Maybe a
Right.
handful of those people exist, but the people who have stuck with it and are doing the activism now are nothing short of brilliant, you know. So we did that. Funding stalled some. We did the GoFundMe. A lot of people, stepped up, which I'm eternally grateful for. We then stalled, and I don't know how to put this,
Well,
but
before we get there, you
yeah,
were you were talking about the movie Dumb Money, right? In the
yeah.
way that retail investors were portrayed to be, dumbasses, living in their mom's basement, losers, things like that. When in actuality, the majority of these people are, highly intelligent, deeply entrenched in the financial markets, and are aware of things that probably 99 or 98% of people in the world are completely unaware of. So I do agree with you completely, and I was not a big fan of the way that they were portrayed, or that way that retail investors were portrayed in the movie Dumb Money. I didn't think it did anybody any justice either. And
It
go
really
ahead.
didn't. It really didn't. And the reality of it was it tried to give equal weight to the people who I would consider the, antagonists or the villains in the whole scheme, and acted like, well, their story is just as valid as the story of the victims. And that's like, I'm sorry, would you, in the same way that we cross-examine the victims in to use a dark analogy, in a rape case. I've interviewed people who have been through that stuff, and they always say, and an attorney told me, once you're victimized in that way, on average, you get victimized 10 more times by the system if you're trying to bring justice to what happened to you. I think this is the exact same thing. So they're going to mock you, they're going to make fun of you, they're going to call you stupid or ignorant. They're going to say you lost your money because you're a bad investor. Why would you even be putting your money into that piece of shit company, whatever it might be? All of these things. And the reality of it is they're manipulating the process every single step of the way. And then
Amen.
it's like a game that's already been rigged, So
It's a
yeah,
long,
that's
hard battle.
it really is. But these people that we interviewed, they were good people, man. They opened their homes up to us generally. They gave great interviews. You could see the sincerity and the emotion that they all dealt with. Um, and each one of them, like our little Dirty Dozen group, had a area of expertise. And I would say, because since then I've watched a lot of divisions happen. People get angry at other people. I'd say there's two things. One, occasionally people are going to just come along and they're just going to take advantage of the situation, and they're no better than the hedge fund people that are creating a lot of this, or the people on Wall Street, or the people that facilitate it in government. But then there are other people who just they're at the end of their rope. I mean, I talked people down off of ledges essentially during the first round in the early 2000s,
Yeah.
because people committed suicide, people lost everything, people were living out of their vehicle. It's just like, how can you not feel for those people, So you have that same thing now with the added um, kind of kind of a magnifier of media. So back then you heard about it because somebody called into my radio show, or somebody called me and said, hey, this person is going through this. What can we do to help them? Now it's on X, it's on Facebook,
It's
it's on
all over
it
social media now. You can't hide it
all.
anymore.
Exactly, exactly. And so we went through that first round. Interviews were great.
So
we
what's going
then
on now?
we then began to work towards putting together a trailer so we could do the next round of funding. And my editor, who was also the cinematographer, and myself both, but more importantly, him, basically said, I'll just defer my salary to get this out there, just so we can go ahead and do the next phase because we knew it was going to happen because what we had was good. And I'm going to tell the story. I want to tell the story from the perspective of the what some people would call villains, but I would call the heroes of the story. And then people need to know that too, that these people that they're trashing and dogging and insulting and taking cheap shots at and giving death threats to are they're heroes. You know, that they're in at the level of Darren Saunders. That's what he did, you know. And I mean, I did it in my own way. We all did. We just were trying to do our best. At some point, I was co-producing with Christina Copeland. She's the one who did the first project. She produced it. Her husband was the executive producer. He paid for it. There's a whole story between them I'm not going to get into, but it was complicated in the first film. I had issues that I had to work through. I'm going to leave that at that.
Yeah,
Uh, the sake of decorum. In this one, I thought we were doing well, and then she began and hit her husband was very, very wealthy. Um, she began to go off in an entire, I'll just say, a very different direction than I was wanting to go into. You know, this is not if I film an interview with someone I consider a villain. Sure, if they think they're cocky enough that they can make themselves look good in that interview, that's beautiful. But the reality of it is, I know they're a villain, you know they're a villain, everybody knows they're a villain. And in the film, they come off, hopefully the truth comes out, you know. She began to then associate with one or two of them, and that made me extremely uncomfortable to the extent of one of them, she approached them for money and funding. And at that point, I
hmm.
just, you know, and she would become erratic, and erratic to the point that one of the major investors said, I think she's purposely trying to sabotage the project.
I
I
see.
won't speak to that one way or the other, but I will say that the end result is that the project has been sabotaged
So you
up to
you've
this.
got you've got me intrigued here, and I think everybody else listening. So you're saying
Yeah.
that Christina Copeland began to try to work together with one of these people from a hedge fund that is trying to
Yes.
associate themselves with the film.
Yes. I probably won't throw his name out there, but I'll say he was a major player in the Overstock thing. He paid a sizable fine on that one when he lost. He was involved in AMC. I think, didn't he short AMC halfway into the ground and then lost a bunch of money and bitched about it? When that happened,
Another short, hedgy fuck.
yeah, 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 and they have a very, him included, a very pompous attitude and approach, and that they believe, and again, we discussed this a little bit before the show, that they are judge, jury, and executioner, and that they can go, I think that company is not as good as it says it is. It's one thing to say, I think that company's an absolute fraud through and through. Expose that all day long. That's what I had to do when I wrote that book. The people who wanted me to write the book did not want me to come up with the conclusion that their own CEO was a crook, but he was. And a lot of eyes got opened, and people in the end, you come to terms with the new truth, whatever wherever that leads you. But yeah, he thinks he has the right to, let's say in the case of AMC, go, I think this company is overvalued. Therefore, I'm going to use every manipulative tool I have to beat that company into the ground. And that's not supply and demand. Naked short selling is not that. Naked short selling and even shorting to a degree. I believe that the way we short is even flawed and broken, quite frankly,
Absolutely.
because there's no hard locate. And in my mind, years ago, I learned that it would be, and this was 2 decades ago, through a guy I talked to out of Canada who was a software designer. He designed the numbering systems for the gambling uh, casinos and lottery systems around the country. And he approached me and said, we can number every stock. That is not that complicated.
They could
We can keep track.
serialize, put a serial number on a stock. It's not outrageous, right? They can do it to the dollar. They can print billions, if not
Exactly.
trillions, of these with serial numbers. But you're going to tell me they can't do it to a
Yeah,
stock? Come on.
exactly. Exactly. So that's one thing. So I have issues with the way short selling is done. In my mind, if you can't make short selling um, legal and efficient, then halt short selling altogether. I'm sorry, but if you can't make it work right and it's corrupted and manipulated every single day, then it's not a viable system.
Absolutely not.
That's the thing. And I know a lot of people may not agree with that, but I'm like, no, if you can't do it right, then don't do it at all.
Well, retail investors are coming around to that. They're starting to understand exactly what you're talking about. And over the last few years, I'd say specifically the last 3-4 years, people have gotten a bird's eye view of exactly what's going on, and they've been able to hone in and truly understand better than ever. Because I remember even myself as a former investor in like a company like a short squeeze like Dry Ships, and even involved partially in like Volkswagen and stuff back in the day. A lot of people had never seen that before. They didn't know what the hell was going on. But now with retail investors, millions and millions of retail investors, not just a small number that are invested in stocks like GameStop and AMC and others that we've mentioned, it's really coming out to the forefront, and people are getting red pilled. For lack of a better word, they're being able to see the matrix for what it really is, and it's allowing a lot of people to break out of the matrix. So I'm really happy and proud that you guys are working on the film. I'm sorry, I should say the series, uh, Financial Terrorism in America, especially since you're the one that coined the fucking term in the first place way back in like '04 or whatever when you started writing these articles, right? So,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
you're telling me you were interviewing guys, you interviewed a multitude of people. Can you drop us just a couple names of some of the more popular ones that we might know about that may be in the series that you've already
Sure.
interviewed?
If you look at the trailer, which is if you just type in financial terrorism in America trailer, it's on YouTube, and everybody should watch and continue to spread that. Frank Nez did a great interview with him. He said he had never actually been on camera before for an interview. He
Mm-hmm.
was really nervous. He did an amazing job,
Awesome.
as and he's done a lot as through his own journalism. And another thing we do is denigrate people like him, the independent journalists, well, they're doing the hard work and they're saying the shit that other people don't want to say. Anna Massey gave us a great interview. Um, we interviewed Wes Christian, of course, always a phenomenal interview when you
Excellent.
interview Wes. Uh, Robert Shapiro, one of my favorite people, just a great guy. And you'll see another side of him on camera because
Oh yeah.
we we interviewed him at his home, came downstairs. It was a reunion of sorts for him and I. He's got all his dogs running around, and he's just this cool, down to earth guy, and got a wicked sense of humor that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
very cool.
he's yeah, yeah.
Getting to see the other side of these people.
Fran
Sorry, go ahead.
William Frand, we interviewed him. Great guy. I'd never met him before. A guy named Anthony Acid, who is a producer and he's done a lot of the Wu-Tang Clan stuff, and he got involved in MMTLP. So the variety people is really, and I'd say go watch the trailer. You'll see about 10 or 12 people who are really solid people, that I just was impressed. Kristen O'Shaughnessy gave us a great interview. We just had so many of them, and again, each one of them brought their own element to it, So I'm scrolling through. I know I'm missing some really good names, and some of them. Wolfie flew over from England,
Our very own
and
Wolfie
I
Darren.
got to meet him, and it was just beautiful. It was just like, he does embody, his name being Darren, the spirit of Darren Saunders in many ways. Just a good heart, he was fun. It was fun to meet him. So yeah, there's a lot of people that we just, again, they each brought their own element, personality, and
Yeah.
area of expertise. So it's like putting a corporation together when you've got like, oh, wait, over here, we've got this person who is an actual private investigator who's digging into this other person who's, oh, they've been on Wall Street. They know what it's like behind the curtain. You know, oh, this person's a numbers nerd over here. So he's doing all this analysis on this stuff. And you put them all together. And Kristen, oh, she's a journalist. So she takes it from a very methodical journalist approach. And yeah, it was a very beautiful experience for me. I was very pleased with the people that we met. They impressed me.
So you've.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
so now we're at the point where we need more funding, but finally in July 4th to be exact, after just frankly, I got to a point where I just said, I'm sorry, I will not work with Christina on this project anymore for whatever reasons. I've got a lot more that I could say that I won't say, but just that we had very different perspectives on where the project needed to go. And she has voiced that she wants it to be successful. Finally, on the 4th of July, she sent out a series of interesting emails and texts to the main investors and saying, I don't want any involvement with this. Y'all are on your own. Good luck with it. And I'm saying it in much nicer terms than she did. Um, and at that point, I thought, okay, good, because I need to get her to sign off because we can't go to streamers, and I won't go to streamers. I won't ask for money on a GoFundMe. I won't ask people to put their money into a project if I think that project has chaos in the middle of it. You know what I mean? If I
So
think that
correct
if
me
I
if I'm
think
wrong, Mark.
we can't properly do what we're supposed to do, then I'm
Yeah.
not going to ask anybody to be involved in it. And right now, I thought, and I posted this on X about a week or two ago, maybe, first, that I just hit a brick wall, and I basically gave her everything she wanted just to sign off and let us finish the project. She
Right.
has maintained since then that she doesn't want to be involved. But right now, we're at a stumbling block over a minimal amount of money, which one of the investors said, I will find that money and give it to her just for her to go away, just so we can move forward with it. Darren Saunders would, I think, clear this up in a day. He's less strategic than I am, or maybe more strategic. Maybe
Depends on
his
how you look at it, right?
yeah, maybe
Uh,
this blunt fuck you, here's how we're going to deal with this. You need to quit being an asshole methodology. His maybe that was him being strategic because I know Brooklyn has their own type of personality and justice, and it's a beautiful thing. So right now, I thought, because like I said, one of the investors said, I'll provide the money to just make her go away. And I said, okay, here it is. We're going to give it to you. Even though the money, and she said she needed the money to close out the LLC, to just wrap up all the loose ends of the first
That's
entity.
not
So
fucking expensive. It doesn't cost a lot to
no,
wind down an LLC. And
no.
so there,
And
that's what the holdup is there with Christina.
and the
Wow.
money was already there to do that. So that's why I balked at it in the first place on general principles. As I said, investors said, fuck it, let's give her the money, she'll go away. So I said, so one of the investors, is willing to just pay you what you asked for. The reply was, oh, you have new investors? Well, now I'm going to have to see how much money I want,
Get the
thinking
fuck
that
out of
I
here.
thinking that I had found new investors.
What a
No,
fucking piece of
no, this
work.
this is the same people. We're literally giving you every penny that you asked for. And I told her yesterday, I'm like, I'm done. That's where we're at. Here's the offer. It's on the table for now. I'm going to be on a live stream tomorrow. I didn't tell her where, but we will be discussing this.
Now,
Um, while we're at it, I'll check my email.
we're talking about Christina Copeland here trying to get a few bucks out of you guys to wind down an LLC. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't she married to a multimillionaire, if not 100 millionaire, and also the daughter of one of the like main owners of Blackstone, or the granddaughter of
No,
somebody who owns
I
Blackstone?
think she's the granddaughter of the company, and I may be getting this slightly wrong, but it was Copeland. They invented one of the main parts that's used in every refrigerator, and that company was recently sold to Blackstone.
Gotcha. Okay, I see.
Yeah, and it's Copeland something electronics or something like that.
All right,
So it's
all right.
easy to look up. Now she will say that she doesn't get that money. Her and her husband, I won't go into, she shares too much with me, but I'll say that they have had their own issues, just like when I did the first film. It was a battle. I
Someone in
found when I was picking up old records from that era, to begin the new project, a list I made that said, top reasons or why I'm finishing this film. And the very first one said, I promised Darren Saunders on his deathbed that it would be finished. And that was the only one I needed. I
yeah,
had no choice. It
yeah,
was a moral obligation, and
amazing.
this one I feel the same way about it. It's a moral obligation to a lot of people. And I'm almost hesitant to do this, but I think this is okay. And this is what I would ask of people if you're listening. If you have had contact with Christina, or if you put money into the GoFundMe, you have a right, I think, to ask her respectfully. We're trying to be strategic here. I don't, I want to attack the bad guys. I don't want to fight with someone who may just be a little tone deaf on their compassion for what's going on. Maybe she's involved. I personally don't think she is. I think she's just of a different world than some of us, and
A
that's
privileged
not even
world.
a privileged world, and that's not even a cut because she did make that first film, and I appreciate her for that.
Yeah,
At this
I agree.
point, though, she needs to go, hey, we're giving you everything you asked for. Sign the damn paper and walk away. And she'll get her, 1,500 to close down that's all it was. That's all it
Right.
was. But don't keep moving the goalpost. Don't keep moving every time I go, it's finally done. And I'm lucky that I have four attorneys in my family, and one of them happens to be retired, and she's a contract person. So for free, we just do shit for each other. We're family. I gave her an old car a while back, and she's like, "Well, I owe you something." here you go. She's written all these up for me. So she's tweaked it 8 times to finally give her everything she asked for, except now she's asking for more. So I would just
What's a good
say
email or a
in the
good
in
contact for her?
yeah, and I would say in the name of all of the people who have been victimized, in the name of all the people who do not deserve to be victimized again, you know what I mean? By people that are supposed to
Yep.
help them, just please sign off on this and let the project move forward. Because then we still have to go raise money, but at least we can go on to the next step. So it's Christina Copeland, and I'll just give you her email address. And again, be respectful with the idea that we're trying to get her to sign off, but you also have a right to say, no, this is our fight. We've invested in it. We've been interviewed for it, whatever your role in it might be. You have a right for that film to survive and hopefully live to be finished. Just like you have a right in the companies you invest in for them to survive of their own accord. And that's where we're at. That's what we're asking her. Just you've gotten everything you asked for, sign the paper, walk away, and then we can all do the hard work of trying to get this thing out there. And it's Christina, Kristina. So Christina at ChristinaLeeCopeland.com. So Christina at Christina Lee Copeland, which is KRISTINALEIGH. So like Lee, COPELAND.com. So
I'm putting it
we
in the
can put
comments
that
down
up
below
there.
right now for everybody to reach out
So
and respectfully
Christina,
request,
yeah,
as
just
Mark
sign
said.
off and let us move forward
I mean, I think
in the
it's absolutely
spirit
ridiculous, man. You know, excuse me if I'm a little bit more pissed off about it than you're letting on.
COPE.
I'm sure I know you're extremely frustrated with it. The fact of the matter is
It's
that
been
retail investors, you know, donated to the creation of this series, and you guys
you
have done a
did.
great job, and you guys had spent a lot of time and money, right, traveling, literally traveling the country from the fucking southern East Coast to the Northeast Coast, all the way to the West Coast, up and down both sides, to film,
Yep.
to edit, to get shit together, to produce, you know, to produce whatever this content, and of course, you know, it's expensive to do this with multiple people. You need hotel rooms, you need fuel, you need equipment, you need time, you need all sorts of things. And now that you guys have actually produced a trailer, you guys are putting together everything that you need here
I
to
think
get close
we've
to launch, and interference here, or the unwillingness to let you guys proceed over what's basically sounds like extortion to me. Excuse me if I'm wrong. Allegedly, right? I'll just say allegedly. It sounds like alleged extortion. For
definitely
the
agreed. Very
greed,
least it's
yeah. And I don't think that that's right. I think that's absolute bullshit. And I hope that you know, Christina comes around and you know,
yeah.
does right by retail investors. Because some people in the comments here right now, I'm hearing people saying that they're saying no need to tiptoe, Mark. We gave money to make the documentary. We're trying to help. It's the whole idea of the documentary is like all of us working together, you know. So
Yep.
I gave him the email right there. And did I spell Lee wrong? How do you spell Lee Copeland?
Uh,
Leigh.
LEIGH and then COPELAND
Thank
dot
you.
com.
Yep,
So
that's right.
Christina at symbol ChristinaLeeCopeland.com.
Yeah, because I think people
And
should
again,
be reaching out and letting
yep.
her know how they feel about it, because that's absolute fucking bullshit as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you're being less diplomatic than me. Let me say that anything anybody is thinking right now, I have said 1,000 times in private conversations and in conversations with some of the people. Um, I think it was Heather Roberts who we also interviewed, who was like, so you had four of you, all of your film equipment, all of your luggage. cramped inside of a fucking SUV driving up and down the coast doing interviews, sometimes two a day.
Wow.
We were over, you know, and working long hours. She's, to put it bluntly, sitting in a coffee shop at Lake Tahoe for the majority of the film. And I'm not saying she didn't do some work, because she did. She set up some of the interviews, those types of things. Um, but also the work came down to our crew, and I will go to war to defend how good my crew is. That's how I used it. We did with four people what most documentaries do with 15 or 20 people. And that's how I like to operate, because the crew's out of Oklahoma. They're frankly considerably cheaper than hiring crews out of LA or New York. So, in other words, I want to respect every dollar that came in. And at this point, it just needs to move forward. I am not, it's been insanely frustrating for me. And I think every shareholder who's involved in the issue overall, and every person, especially who has put money in, especially if there's a little round at the end that about $800 or $900 went in. Well, that money never even got accounted for. That money could have been used to resolve this months ago, and she could have gone home and it would have been over, and we would be moving forward. We have people ready to pitch the project. We have people who have connections in the industry who want to see this moving forward, but we can't do it when there's uncertainty in the ownership,
Right.
of the thing. So yeah, I'm only being strategic right now. I'm not being fully blunt in the way I would normally like to be, because my singular goal is to get her to sign a fucking piece of paper, go on about her business. She'll get credit in the film that she may or may not deserve, whatever. She helped get it started, so sure, that's fine. And let us do the rest of the work. It's
Some
really that
people think
simple.
that some people think that maybe the person from the hedge fund that she was trying to get to invest in the film is causing her
Behind
to
it.
hold up the project. That's what the comments are saying right now.
I have had at least one of the major investors who put in, I think, the largest chunk of money, say that exact same thing. And I
That
won't
would be
go
fitting,
either
wouldn't it?
way. I will say that when he got her ear, and you can name him, I don't give a shit, but when he got her ear, everything changed.
How many of you people here in the community are familiar with Mark Cahotas? Let me know in the live chat, in the live stream, what your. This is who we're talking about, by the way. Mark Cahotas. Now, there's no need, like some people said, to tiptoe around the situation, especially when this has been an extremely polarizing individual who has been manipulating and talking poorly about the 99%, the retail investors, the millions and millions of people that are invested in AMC, GameStop, and many of these other stocks, who has been
He
insulting.
paid a hefty fine during the overstock thing, so he ended up paying out of pocket, even though he'll tell you, no, I never did naked short selling. Oh, but you paid millions because, in a settlement, because you didn't want to go to court and have to prove that in front of everybody. Yeah. So
So, long story short, Christina wanted to get in further investor funds from Mark Cahotas in order to develop the film, and this occurred towards the end of development while you guys were pretty much already wrapping up
yeah,
filming. Is that correct?
probably I want to say January, February, because that's when I just started going, not no, but hell no, just hell no,
You were
and
opposed to this.
oh, absolutely not opposed to it. It wasn't going to happen. I will not allow that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah,
You don't sell a piece of your soul. You sell your soul or you don't. That's my philosophy. One, you don't sell little pieces and come out intact because now they fucking own you. And that's the truth.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Getting in bed with hedge funds is not a good look. And so I don't blame you at all for being vehemently opposed and putting down your foot and saying, hell no, we're not doing this. I don't want to be associated with Mark Cahotas as an investor in the film, so that he can, push his agenda or try to make himself look like a patron saint here, because anybody who's familiar with this guy is well aware of the things that he's done with Overstock, with T Zero, with AMC, with GameStop, and the manipulation there, and the way that he's spoken poorly about CEOs of companies like, these same companies, Adam Aron, Ryan Cohen, and many other people out there that are just trying to do right by their investors. At the same time, the same person has, basically rallied others, with false information and spoken negatively about many key members in the community. And you know who you are if you've been attacked by this guy or his, basically merry men of shills here, his little paid party of hedge fund shills. I'm really happy to hear that you, Mark, personally, put your foot down and said, we're not going to fucking deal with this guy. We're not going to have, allow him to own a part of our film. So I applaud you for that, man.
And that would be a betrayal to everybody. It just would be a betrayal. So it can't happen. It didn't happen. I wasn't going to let it happen. And here's a really weird. This is an extremely short story of how it came into play that we were to interview him. Wasn't my idea, but I'm fine. I'll interview, whoever, but clearly with the idea that I know um, which side people are on as a
Yeah.
general rule. Sometimes the process exposes that. Didn't take 10 minutes of researching him to figure out, which side of the fence he lived on. So apparently this is a little odd because I've had these things happen in the past and I always kind of go, yeah, coincidence. I don't know. I don't like to dive too deep into the conspiracy, but here's what I do know. Billionaires have a shit ton of money at stake and the ability to manipulate the market. They will do anything and I don't mean anything short of having people offed. I believe there are people who would gladly kill somebody if they had to protect their riches because they already have no morals. Some of them are just straight up sociopaths. So she's at Lake Tahoe while we're traveling around. She goes into a coffee shop, I guess, to work each day. Someone sits in the coffee shop on her computer and is on the phone. So those of you, nah, never mind. I won't go there. But the things she did
Come
day to
on, go
day,
there. Go there, brother.
uh, the things she did day to day, let's say it was a questionable use of productivity and time, because she would talk and chat for hours. Just know that she was on the clock when she was doing that. So now tell me this is coincidental. I get a call from her one day as we're traveling between cities, and she says, "Wow, I just had this really either the story's not accurate or the coincidence of it is very odd. I'm in a coffee shop in at Lake Tahoe doing a film about market corruption. Random young guy walks up to her, starts talking to her. Turns out he's an investor. I don't know his name. He says, "Hey, you want to interview this hedge fund guy?"
Oh, what a coincidence.
And yeah. And she's like, "So now I have his information." I'm like, you know what? Yeah, we'll interview him because I'm going to take it from a certain approach and I'm going to try to let his own words show his true colors. I'm fine with that. Bad guys are great in a film.
Yeah, we need the
But
bad
it was
guys.
very odd. Yeah, and then all of a sudden she's buddies with him. They're talking every day. At one point recently, within the last 3 months, she texts me at one point and says, Mark Cahotes doesn't want to be in the film anymore, and he never signed a release. My
Oh, he
my
changed his
line
mind, huh? He
yeah,
changed
yeah.
his mind.
My,
Oh, too bad, so
my
sad.
line producer, who's here at the time, I'm like, "Hey, did we get a release from him?" Within 3 minutes, she's like, "Here's my phone dings," and like, up there it is, signed release from him. So yeah, so the guy, as smart as he thinks he is, thinks he doesn't remember signing the release, but yeah, he signed a fucking release.
That's
So,
hilarious. That's fucking hilarious. I'm not
um,
surprised either, and I think that's why a lot of the people here are aware of this guy's character, and they've seen the way that he is, the way that he talks to people, the narcissism, the absolute sociopath, discussions and space calls that he's put out in the past, where he tries to rally, his party of shills and unsuspecting listeners against well-meaning retail investors and activists, such as many of those in the community that have been here for many years now, simply for his own gain, for their own financial gain. And I think that's a lot about very similar to what's currently happening with Andrew Left of Citron Research, who is currently facing 370 years in federal fuck me in the ass prison due to charges by the Department of Justice and the Securities Exchange Commission for manipulating markets in short distort campaigns and lying about being paid by hedge funds to manipulate markets against AMC, GameStop, Tesla, and other retail shareholders. And I have a feeling that the DOJ and the SEC are probably well aware, acutely aware of what guys like Mark Cahotes and such are allegedly doing here on the internet and on social media. And I think that's why people in the channel here are in the chat are literally saying that they believe that she's being either told or paid to hold up the
yeah,
film.
regardless of which it is, I had a friend back when we were doing Occupy who would call out people that she thought were cops, or plants because turned
Because
out
they
later through
exist.
FOIA requests nationally, they plant people everywhere,
Exactly.
whether it was Ferguson, whether it was Occupy Wall Street, whether it was the George Floyd protest. They're planting people everywhere. And it's not just the government, it's also big banks and
Mm-hmm.
very wealthy people. They plant people into X to disrupt you guys and
Yep.
try to divide and conquer. We're going to try to take people who are sincere but confused, because this shit is confusing, and turn them against other people who are out day to day doing the hard work. And so
Yep.
it's way whatever they can do to disrupt, divide, corrupt the process, keep any of us from moving forward with the truth. That's what they do. He Yeah, okay, here's another tidbit. Right after we interviewed him, we finished our run up and down the West Coast. We come back. Our last interview of that round that is scheduled is Wes Christian.
Oh
Purposely
yeah.
saved him for last. He's in Houston, quick flight. We didn't even think we spent one night there. We like show up, we interview him the next morning, and we're back on a plane that evening. So again, we're trying to, you
Lean
know,
budget, time constraints.
oh,
I understand.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, but she was like, "No, we're running short on funds." After Cahote, she says, "Let's not interview Wes now." Like,
What?
wait, what?
What?
And again, I'm not gonna say it out loud, but anybody can read into that shit whatever they want to. And I think, regardless, as I was saying a minute ago, that same person, I would be like, I don't think that guy's actually a cop or a plant. And finally, one day she said, here's the thing, some of them are, some of them aren't, but they're disrupting and they're a negative um, drain and drag on the issue. So does it matter whether they're just crazy assholes who are making it harder for us to move forward, or actually on somebody's payroll? It doesn't matter in the end. You got to get rid of them. And she was right about that. So in Christina's case, Do I think she's bought and sold? I'm not gonna go there, but people have.
I think
Do I
people can
think
decide for
she,
themselves.
yeah,
I don't
and
think they care,
do I
whether you say it
she's
or not.
yeah. Do I think she's being manipulated? Absolutely, at the very least. But in the end, none of those things matter. What matters is that she is the singular person who has the power over the pettiest bullshit to kill this project.
Yeah, and you,
And, and
go ahead.
as this should have been resolved in at the latest February. So we're talking 6, 7 months that this thing has just been in a horrible flight pattern, holding pattern, circling above the fucking airport and can't land and move on to the next step. And frankly, that pisses me off it pisses me off worse to have people who are supposed to be on your side fuck you over and turn against you than it does to have the straight out of Casting Central bad guys. Of
Yeah,
course they're bad guys, you expect them to be assholes. People are supposed to be on your side that then manipulate and subvert the projects that you're working on or the momentum of it. That pisses me off worse than anything because we thought you were on our side. Is
exactly. It
she?
seems a lot of
We'll
people. Well, we
find
all
out.
thought that we were that she that these people that they have the best intentions here,
Yep.
but that may or may not always be the case. And I want to mention for everybody listening now, and even you, Mark. I don't know if I've told you this, but when Christina reached out to me, what, maybe a couple years ago now, a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. Yeah, and wanted to have me on the film, wanted to interview myself for the series, and I've probably spoken to Christina for many hours now. When I talk to her, they're usually hour and a half, 2.5, 3 hour long conversations that I usually had to cut off because she does enjoy to talk a lot, and I don't know if she was on the clock or not, or if she was getting paid for it, and if though that's where the conversations stem from. But I felt as if it seemed as if she had the good intentions, but it feels like the more and more that we discussed, the more that we talked, and that things went on, that degenerated into more of a discussion that did come off a little bit less genuine than she had initially let on. Now, this
Yeah.
just my perception of it, but we did have a conversation probably about 6 months ago as well, back maybe like February-ish or so, January, February, somewhere in that range, between Christina, myself, Wolfie, and a few other people that have already been interviewed for your series here. And we probably spoke. I think the three of the several of us and Christina spoke for the better period of almost 2 hours, and a lot of it was conflicting information that we were receiving from Christina. We were asking her at the beginning of the conversation, we were getting one thing, and then as time went on, she would say something else that pretty much indicated to me that there was some not so truthful things being said. Trying to paint others as the bad guy, and I was not too fond of that. Especially, like yourself, I'm also an activist here, and I'm a business owner. I've been self-employed for over 20 years, and I only preface that to tell people that I've unfortunately had to hire and fire, to the tune of hundreds of people, and I've heard every excuse in the book for everything from a day off to the reason why something couldn't get done. And I have my bullshit detectors really started to go off. My bullshit radar was just going off the chain with this conversation with Christina. And I hate to say that because we were under the impression that she genuinely wanted to help people and to, make this film, this new film, for a good reason. But I think that over time that reasoning changed, or that something occurred there, through the needing for additional funding, in which Mark Cahota's became involved, and I think that really, ever since that I heard about that, when she told us that he was going to be involved in the film and that he might be an investor in the film, I immediately told her, and I know Wolfie and the other people in this discussion would attest to the fact that I said that I don't want to be involved with it whatsoever if Mark Cahotas is going to be investing money into this documentary, because I know that it's going to be denigrated into something that it should not, that it was never intended to be, and it seems like you've got our best interest in mind here. So I would like to thank you for that. And it looks like, yeah, Steve Brown in the chat is saying that she's sabotaging it. He's saying that Mark Cahotas is a snake. And looks like Zambada, 401 Doge, Samony, and others are already, sending emails to Christina. And I applaud you guys for that, because I think that that's what needs to happen. I think just like retail investors banded together to fight for the consolidated audit trail, they've banded together to reach out to the SEC to fight for market disclosure and market transparency acts with great fervor, and it's gone along very well, and that's exactly what we need. I think that people now need to reach out to Christina and let her know respectfully that it is time to let the film proceed, especially since these people invested their money into it. And it seems that, through by holding it up, that she may not be doing her duty to those investors as well to let the film proceed if she's just stonewalling the fucking thing.
Yeah, that's almost an understatement. Here's one of the
An
messages
understatement.
she
Go ahead, bud.
uh, this is one of the emails she sent on July 4th to me and Mark Bazel. Said, I
Mark Bazzil,
value,
the attorney, the
yeah,
securities attorney that you guys have interviewed. Okay, go ahead.
uh, good guy, and he's actually one of the people that helped us produce the trailer. So because his beginnings were in the entertainment industry. So and he was it was again, I'll understate this. It was so refreshing to we would put something together, send it to him. He would go, well, here, how about we punch up this a little bit, and how about we tie these two together with something here? Or, he would give me notes that made sense from a production perspective. And in fact, at the time, I told him this, that once, if we can get past all of this, if he would be interested in being a co-producer to work, I would work with them. He was very professional. He was smart in his notes. He helped us. I put together a deck, which is a pitch deck. Essentially, they used to be a really 3 type pages. Now it's like a 20-page thing done on Canva that's slick and pretty.
Yep.
But I have that ability to do that. My background's actually in art, so
Mm-hmm.
that's like, so I do all that. That's one of the things that helps us keep our costs down. So this is what she sent on July 4th. It said, hey, Mark and Mark, I value my family and lifestyle and have no interest in saving the global world financial greed. I wish you luck.
So basically, she
And
came out and said this
I
was
have
never
no
really
interest
about
in
making a
this.
difference
Yeah,
for her.
I have no interest in it. She
Yeah.
sent another one to the two of us, and a couple other people were on
Say that
that
for me one
thread.
more time. Read that for me one more time, brother. Loud and clear here.
And I'm going to say this is not her worst email. This is actually fairly measured for her.
Wow.
Dear Mark and Mark, I value my family and lifestyle and have no interest in saving the global world financial greed. I wish you luck! Explanation point.
And the truth always fucking comes out, doesn't it? The truth
And
always comes out.
and that's what made me go, oh, good. Now I can write up a release and she'll walk away. This should be easy. But it's been, I'm going to say we've written 8 to 10 versions of this, each time tweaking it a little to get her to sign off. She also sent another one that day that basically said, and this was again to a company person who's lost money, through their own company because of naked short selling, or in their investments, I should say, and a couple of people who are fighting the battle. And it said, and I might barely be paraphrasing, but I don't think I am. That said, Um, you are all fucked financially. I am not. Period. That was it.
Wow, the privilege, unbelievable.
Oh, okay. There was another day. I'm gonna go ahead and throw some of these out there
You guys
where
listening to
she
this?
told me, oh no, it's dark. It's dark. Where her and I were arguing. We're having this argument of like, no, hedge fund people are not gonna fund our film. That kind of, you know, no, we're gonna keep our integrity here. She wanted to
Yeah,
bring in the
fuck Mark
people
Cahotis.
who did she wanted to bring in the people who did Gaming Wall Street. I had a couple of conversations with them. I like them. They were actually very cool. They were cool people. Gaming Wall Street was one of the better um, documentary series,
Yeah,
but it still wasn't about corruption in the market and naked short selling. You know what I mean?
yeah, they
Nobody's
missed the
done,
mark.
yeah, it's like, whoa, crazy thing happened. And then a bunch of people ganged up and beat up on some hedge fund people. And then the hedge fund people fought back and, like it was an equal battle. When
Right.
in reality, the problem is, why should any of you as investors have to fight market wide corruption? That's
Hmm.
not your job. Your job is to try to pick a good company, invest in it with all your due diligence, which all these people we interviewed said, I did my due diligence. They all told me this. We dug up, we did research, we compared notes because now you have Reddit, now you have X, now you have Facebook, now you have all these places where you can get together and you become better than an analyst because you're piecing together
Absolutely.
all your research. And yeah, so I'm trying to think of what was the one I wanted to mention. Okay, so one day we're in the middle of this argument. Um, and Basil, to his credit, kept just going, just leave me off this fucking thread. Not my problem. I don't want to be West Christian. Keep me the fuck out of the middle of this. Now, I will say I'd love it if they would just step up and write her a cease and desist letter and tell her to go the fuck away. That I would, but again, I understand as attorneys, they have to look at it, they have to tread in a different way than I do, because they have a lot involved in it and a lot invested in it. But she's talking to us one day. Apparently, she gets a little annoyed and she says she's down in Palm Beach because that's where they winter, is in Palm Beach, of course. So, I mean, yeah, that's where they winter is Palm Beach. So this is January, February. And she said, you know what? You guys figure it out. I'm going to go to a boat show and buy a yacht. And I'm just like, okay, wow. So in the end, it was like, and this is me speculating, trying to get inside that
Sounds
head.
very petty.
Yeah, in my mind, the first film she was better with because she was the boss and she could order us around, and I guess it made her feel good. I don't know. In this one, because I had to fight in the first one. The first one still didn't get everything in it that I wanted in there. As an example, one of the people who defrauded Rod Young was Citibank. And every time I would write them into the film, I would come back, whatever, after the weekend, and it would be gone. And the editor, who was a great editor, Constantine Limpiris, little Greek guy who would get really mad at her, and but he was dedicated. He was good. He did good work, and he taught me a lot. He was a film instructor at NYU Film School, so my training was on the job through him, and I'm forever grateful to him for that. Um, but she was in control, on this one. I think it was like, because she would, at some point, she would get angry and she would just start ordering me around like I was a servant. And there's a reason why, like you, I was self-employed for most of my life and ran my own companies because I don't want some corporate asshole. Even though I ran a high-end tile and marble company, I had to deal with a lot of rich assholes. But we walked in, did the job. I had workers who came from the inner city. I did my little share of wealth redistribute or trickle down economics, you know. Well, at least I'm putting some money in the pocket of people who need it. And then we walk off and did the next job. And if that guy was a dick, fine, I'll never contract with you again. It
Right.
was that easy. They didn't own me. And I don't do well. I won't be owned. I'd rather be poor and have my morals than be rich and look around and look at the carnage that I helped create or contribute to. I'm just that way, you know. And there's a lot of people that go, if I was a billionaire, I would end world hunger and homelessness and fix all these things. And I believe that that's true of a lot of people. But guess what? You're never going to be a billionaire because you're not enough of a greedy sociopath to become that billionaire. And that's not to say a few billionaires don't do some good things with their money. I'm closer to the Bernie Sanders camp, and I have the bumper sticker on my car to prove it, of billionaires should not exist. And if you're just brilliant, like you're Elon Musk, and you came up with something amazing and you created this, and okay, fine. Then take that money that you earned, give away 90% of it at that point. You're still going to be a billionaire. Look at the good you could do with that, you know, and when you're instead going, now we're going to have a penis envy contest of who can get to Mars, you know, like, wait, what? You have so much money that your hobby is not like my, 8-year-old autistic godson who we buy a $30 little because he loves rockets and launch it over at the school playground. You're going
Nice.
to make rockets,
Yeah.
and go to outer space
Yeah.
because that's your hobby, and I'm again not even dogging in. I'm just saying in general, we'll never be rich because we aren't motivated to become rich. Our sense of morality that most of these people have grounds us in a way, and yeah, and in that moment I would just went, oh wow, have you just been pretending and biting your tongue this entire time?
Hmm.
And now you're just like, fuck you, I'm going to go buy a yacht.
Yeah. And to your
You're literally the hedge fund guy now.
yeah,
You are
exactly.
that
She's
person.
what she claimed to be against is what it sounds like, right? I don't
Yeah.
know if these are true or not, but some people are saying like, and I think it's a valid question because people don't know yet. They're asking how did they end up in this mess, giving away all the rights without doing sub DD on her. Could you explain how you guys have worked together in the past on Wall Street Conspiracy and how this film came about, the new one?
Yeah, in the past, I worked for her film company on the first one. So in other words, I was interviewed. They then didn't know how to tell the story from a filmic and strategic, storyline perspective. They didn't know
Mm-hmm.
what to do with all the interviews. They emailed me and said, "Hey, the director she had at the time emailed me and said, "Hey, how would you tell this story?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I would tell the story through the eyes of the activists who uncovered the fraud, because if you do that, it becomes a good mystery, and you reveal it in pieces as we found out through our eyes." And they said, "Cool. Do you want to come be the writer for the film?" I had never worked on a film at the time. I had written a couple of books. I had written 100+ articles about it. So I knew the topic, and my dad was a playwright. He, a brilliant person. So I come from creative background, been a writer my whole life. I go do the film. I end up shooting all the second half of the interviews. People like John Harmer, Dave Patch, second round of interviews with um, with Rod Young, Robert Shapiro. That's where I met all of them, even though we knew each other from the internet. So that film finally gets made. She did approach me because on the second round, because she said, "I'm getting a lot of play on the first film. We think there's a sequel here." I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And she said, "I'll make you co-partner and co-producer." I will say, in hindsight, in retrospect, I thought that, and her husband was not going to be involved at all, the guy who funded the first one. He was my biggest problem in the first film. He was for risk of him wanting to sue me someday, a raging alcoholic asshole. Um, but she had his pocketbook in her, his checkbook in her back pocket, and that's how she funded that first project and spent way too much money on it. But I wanted equal control. I wanted to be able to go, no, I'm going to make sure the money gets spent properly. We're going to do it professionally because that's what I've done since then is work on
Mm-hmm.
films. She didn't have really any background other than that she worked on that first one. Um, I thought he wasn't going to be involved so that it would be okay that I could work with her and that if her inability to totally relate to the rest of us, um, was an issue. It wouldn't be an issue as long as and I had full creative control. I also negotiated all of that. Full director, full writer, co-producer, complete creative control
Wonderful.
until
Yep.
she got either co-opted or her true colors came, whatever happened, and then I was treated like a janitor and did not sit well with me. One of the major investors said the only reason that they knew about her, and they said until they met me through phone calls and we had conversations with them. Um, they said I was the only reason they invested. Had it been her alone, that they wouldn't have put a penny into it. And so in my mind, I will happily, not happily because I'm not happy about it, but I will take the hit in that I read her a little bit wrong. I thought she was a harmless rich person who wanted to do the right thing, and we just had to guide the story and the creative part of the process in the proper direction, and that she would go, awesome, this is what I wanted. And then it turned out that, as we've now determined, her privilege eventually just overcame her what I hope were um, sincere desire to tell the truth. And I think at the beginning, I would say I think that's true,
Yeah,
or
I hear you.
I would not have involved. But at some point, when things started not going her direction, here comes privilege, and I'm like, wow, you're treating me and my crew and all the people who have contributed to this, including the major investors, like we're all peons and you're better than us, and bullshit to that, just straight up bullshit. And you know, my apologies for whatever I misread that has helped to create this stalemate, but I wasn't going to let it get made in the wrong way.
Well, like you
We
said,
didn't need to
it sounds like something changed there. Because
think
we've
so.
all seen the first film, Wall Street Conspiracy. We've seen the interviews. There's other interviews here on this channel with Christina, yourself, and several other guests, and she definitely seemed extremely sincere. It seemed like she really wanted to help people and wanted to put eyes on this, and it does feel like that changed over time for whatever reason, right? I can't speculate as to what that is, but it does seem coincidental here to just be around the same time that when Christina and I spoke, that she mentioned, having Mark Cahotes become an investor on the film. At which point I told her didn't want to be in the film. I refused to be interviewed for the series if Mark Cahotes is going to be investing money into it, because I think I think many others, we understand that he doesn't give a shit about the 99%. But
Oh,
unfortunately, it seems like somewhere around that time that things changed for
warm turned,
Christina.
yes. It did happen, and I want to be clear too. To this day, and by that I mean yesterday, she in her email still says, "I want you to be able to move on and make this film and put a good project together." I'm giving her credit. I gave her everything she asked for
Right.
because the project is more important than anything else. So I gave her everything. So she's still to this day saying, I want you to go on and do this, and I want it to be good, and because she wants her name on it, and I think she wants to go on and do. I think she's trying to do something on wild Mustangs right now or something to that effect, and all of that's fine, but yeah, don't be petty. Don't be petty. Don't be greedy to the point where you go, come on, you got enough money in your families. And I know she's apparently having some personal issues. I stay out of those, but at this point, like, no, sign off, move on. Let us just go to the next step. You've
Yeah.
already like halted this thing in its tracks for months. And I've tried my best to just because frankly, y'all don't need to deal with this shit. That was part of my thing. Like, as long as I can keep pushing with her, maybe I can get her out of the way. Maybe that's why we did the trailer. That's why we did the deck. And that was all done with her gone. She had nothing to do with when we put all that together.
That is a great
Uh,
trailer too. So you guys think that once Christina's out of the way here, and I wish her the best. I hope that she comes around and just lets the series proceed. You guys think you're going to go to like Netflix or Prime and other companies like that and try to sell them the series to have them as an investor instead? You think that might be a good
yeah,
idea?
now some of them will invest, some streamers will, some won't. Netflix will, but a lot of times you got to be a celebrity. You got to be like if Michael Jordan says, "Hey, I want to do what was it called, the Last Dance or whatever it was." There,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we'll fund that. Oh, Elton John, yeah, we'll fund that.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can get a streamer to go, yeah, we like this. The package looks good. The trailer looks good. We'll buy it. Then you have that contract in your hand, and at the very least, now you go to investors, and it's much easier to find investors. So, but there are
Excellent.
a couple
So there's
of
a path forward.
yeah. So there are a couple of streamers who will self-fund you. So those are our
Gotcha.
options, and that's what we'll do next. Hell, I still haven't. I partially, as much as I could out of pocket, paid Jamal Williams, who is my editor and cinematographer, and frankly, him and I work hand in hand together. When he's editing, we're sitting there going, we've got a project that we're wrapping up now that we've been working on for about 10 years off and on about justice reform. Really, great story in a different realm, but we worked, I haven't even been able to pay all of his salary, and that pisses me off because this is a young kid trying to pay the fucking rent at his apartment so he can do the things he believes in because he wants to be create, and a young person of color. So therefore you get fucked enough
Mm-hmm.
in this world and in Oklahoma being that, and that pisses me off, but we get her out of the way, it can move forward. We can then go at least like we're back at ground zero, but we're not because
You've
we
got a
have
lot
a.
of film already.
That's right. We've probably, in my mind, filmed 75% of the footage we need. So this isn't just episode one. We've done, we've got great aerial shots, and you see some of them in the trailer. So anybody that's listening that hasn't seen the trailer, just look up Financial Terrorism in America trailer on YouTube, and you'll see we shot every inch of that. Every piece of footage that's in there is our little crew. It's a 4-person crew, and that includes a line producer. We all do triple duty on our jobs in order to do a lower budget but still high quality. We all upped our equipment because we're like, man, now we're going to shoot in 4K. We're going to make this thing shine, and out of pocket. We up, and
Wow, that must have been
we
a
do.
pretty
That's
penny
our
out of
job.
pocket.
Well, but that's our job,
Hmm.
in the same way she shouldn't have had the company pay for her computer. We talked early on about, oh, I want to buy this 4K camera. It was about 5 or 6 grand, and I also already had all of the lenses that go with it. Maybe we'll let the company buy that because it's for this. And then I just thought, no, no, that's mine. I'll use that. That's not something that should come out of anybody else's pocket. So I just paid for it. So and that, so point being,
Well, that's integrity. That's why, if you ask me, that.
and it is, and it's really knowing that so many people get ripped off in so many ways, and I never want to contribute for that. I would rather err on the side of uh of being too frugal and short myself because I live in I own a duplex. My niece lives on one side, I live on the other side. It's paid for. It's 100 years old, but it serves its purpose. So I get to do what I love and what I'm passionate about, and I don't need 100 grand a year to do that. Like I learned how to cut my expenses down to where I can fight the fights that I think deserve to be fought. And
Yeah.
people that look me up can go Google my name, and you'll might find two assholes who hate me, but you'll also find, for the fun of it, Google my name and Google Oklahoma County Jail, and you'll see one of the fights we've been fighting for the last 4 years, and it's been a war, and I've been on the news 50 times about it, and the small group of people I work with is like the Dirty Dozen. But
Yeah.
so I'm always lucky and blessed to have, and I only surround myself with people who I believe contribute and have the same heart. We're all going to make mistakes, and we're all going to do something stupid, and we might even do something to hurt somebody. But are their hearts in the right place, and do they believe in good, the greater good? That's all I care about. So
Mark, you're an incredibly humble individual. And I think because of that, you're not realizing what some people in the comments are saying. And what they're saying is that you may not
I
be
don't read.
Michael Jordan, but you are a celebrity. I personally have been seeing your articles about you and the articles written by you and your books and your films for the better part of 2 decades now. And I understand some people, a lot of people may not know who you are. You may not be on the international stage of Michael Jordan, but you're pretty much damn well fucking there, man. I gotta say, even if you don't know it, your name is known by a lot more people than many others. Let's put it that way. So I think that if you were to go to some of these streaming services, they would definitely give you the time of day, whereas somebody else, they may not even think twice. Especially with your resume, with the number of times that you've been literally put in fucking jail for being an activist on Wall Street and Oklahoma City County jails, and all the other things that you've done to try to help people. I think it's really clear to others that for the better part of since like you said, since the '60s plus, you've been doing things to help people, and especially the last 2 decades, as far as I can remember, on the internet, I've been seeing you and your articles and articles about you and the things that you've done. So I want to thank you for that. Absolutely, Mark. So thanks again. Let me see. Any chance if we get as long as Mark Cahota isn't involved as an investor, are we going to get together and do a little something for the series with myself or what?
I had you on my list. I'll
Just putting
tell
you on the
you,
spot.
it was a good list. It was, if this is a Santa Claus list, you were not on the list with him. And again, see, I think people like you and a couple of people we even interviewed, not the ones I named earlier, but a couple of people we interviewed, there's people that go, yeah, some people love him and some people hate him. And You know, I think that how do I put this? I think that most of us operate in the gray area between wanting to be better, perfect people and fucking up sometimes and making choices that we go, oh, that was a bad decision. But right and wrong is not black and white. Now you go to the extremes and you can go, yeah, that person's a sociopath asshole who should, you know, rot in hell. And over here is, I mean, I was going to say Mother Teresa or whatever, but Gandhi. But even those people, you go, look it up. There's some things people didn't like about them. So most of us are in the middle, just trying to
Yep.
be our best to be decent people. And that's where I think most of these people are that I've talked to, and yourself and others, and some people may, but yeah, I think um, your involvement in the cause has been key, and I think that you've created your own level of notoriety and following, and all of those things that are important to the cause, and those are the stories I want to hear. Like, if you go back and watch that first film, I took some stuff out about, no, I didn't. They took some stuff out about Darren Saunders that was in there. And he's like, I'll tell you my fuck ups. I'll tell you how dark things got. We did literal reenactments where he borrowed money to try to invest in Virogen because he thought he could single-handedly bring that stock back up because he felt responsible for getting a bunch of people involved in it. And then Virogen was a company that was killed by naked short selling, like killed. And they had viable treatments for
Yep.
cancer. He ended up owing mobsters money. And at one point, they basically kicked his door in and threatened to kill him because he was behind on his payments.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I'm like, okay, that's you, Darren. That's part of your story, and it's a compelling part of your story. Like, you went in, wait, you went to mobsters and got some loan shark loans in order to buy stock to try to prop up a company because you felt bad because they were getting destroyed, and basically ruined your own life. So yeah, that's what I want to tell people, because there are a couple of people even that we interviewed who have been through emotional roller coasters and been through hell, and you're not alone. You're not alone. Whether we sit in the darkness and expose our emotions by ourselves, or whether we freak out and go on X and blow up, like a fireworks display, every one of us, especially in this realm, has been hurt, and has been desperate at one point, and has been through emotional hell, and has wondered, question your own ability as a human being, when in reality, maybe you made a bad decision when you invested, but maybe your bad decision was that you invested in a company that was being manipulated and destroyed. And that should not be how the market works.
I agree with you. I think a lot of people also blame themselves for the situation,
Oh,
for
yeah.
those kinds of situations when they're literally not to blame. They've done their homework, the fundamentals are sound, the company is sound, but at the same time, naked shorting and other market manipulation are very prevalent in the market, and not everybody is conditioned to be able to handle that kind of thing. Like a lot of people freak out because of unrealized losses or unrealized gains. And they said, I should have sold at this time, I should have sold at that time. And I live by the fact that unrealized losses are the same as unrealized gains. If you didn't sell when the stock was at its highs, why would you sell when the stock is at its lows? As long as it's not going bankrupt, there is always the potential for a future explosion in the stock price, for the betterment of revenues in the company. And so those same people that get put down or that have emotional problems or cannot keep their emotions out of the stock market are oftentimes the ones that struggle the most, unfortunately, and it's understandably so because it's frustrating, right? You see your account go up and to massive highs, and you expect it to go higher, and then they pull the buy button, or they make it impossible for you to log in, or they delist the company, before they're supposed to, like with MMTLP, etc. And people get upset because they didn't sell prior to them. And then, going through time, the stock price is down or they're in the negative. But it's the same thing. If you didn't sell when the stock price was high, it doesn't make a difference. And if you haven't sold when the stock price is low, it doesn't make a difference either. What matters is what the stock price was when you bought and what the stock price was when you sold. And everything else in between is just a lesson in patience and in the ability to actually invest in the stock market for the long term. Because, like you and I have heard, sorry, just one quick second. Warren Buffett has said in the past, if you're not willing to own a stock for 10 years, then you have no business owning that stock for even 10 minutes. And I think that's really important for a lot of people to understand as well. Go ahead,
It,
bud.
it is, except that I think, I hate to say it, that's true of probably maybe 90% of the companies, maybe even 95%. But the companies that came back into the news, GameStop, AMC, Bed Bath and Beyond, all those ones that came back into the news because of the short squeeze and because of naked short selling, it's not the same world it was when he started investing 40, 50 years ago, or however long he's been in the market. It did change in the mid to late 90s, and this is under Clinton. And I say
Yep.
this as a Democrat. I was county chair in Oklahoma County of the Democratic Party for a while, and we did really well in our county. But guess what? There's horrible things have happened on both sides of the issue when it comes to politics. So the problem becomes, I'm going to hold this because I believe in this company. But if someone has the key to the vault and they're robbing the company and they're destroying the company, you're going to get fucked. And it doesn't have anything to do with your acumen of choosing the right company or
Right.
the right stock. We're trying to describe a fair market.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just say we don't have a fair market. Some companies are big enough, well financed enough, and have a strong enough short term business model that they're going to overcome any naked shorting that
Exactly.
might happen.
But not all of them, right?
Companies are. A
Like you
lot of
said,
companies die on the vine because there's like Virogen. When you're a medical company, you're doing nothing but spend money for the first several years until you come up with that breakthrough that could save lives. But if someone's trying to kill you at the same time and going, look at them, they're doing nothing but burning money. And look at their stock price dropping as they're over here with and now we have quants and, spoofing and the things that quants were only coming into play in the probably 2005 and
yeah,
six. That was starting to become a thing. So all of a sudden, algorithms are timing the market and your finger can't hit the buy or sell button as quick as what their quants and what their algorithm programs can do it. And that's why spoofing is now a thing,
bingo.
Oh, we're going to sell 10 million shares at this time. Just kidding. But we can still create the downward pressure in the blink of an eye. It's hard to imagine that, but that's the downside of where the market has progressed. The upside is that same technology that is used to fuck everybody, to put it bluntly, also creates the ability for all of you to network and research, find the evidence, lobby Congress, lobby the SEC, go after FINRA, go after the DTC. They're all players. They're all players. They're not necessarily the billionaires. There's somebody up there pulling all those strings, and they own a congressman or two. They own the SEC. Look at the revolving door of the SEC. They literally own the DTC and FINRA. That realization that, like, wait, you're in charge of making sure the trade's clear, and you're the board of directors, but you also own and we're just, our job is to trust you. Just trust us. But that's, I don't know. That's just where we're at. We're at a point where they have all the weapons and all the tools to screw you. You have nothing but I think, really brilliant community that if they can keep from splintering too much and you can pull more people in, you know what beats a billionaire? 10,000 people banging on their front door, metaphorically. I'm not gonna not gonna
Absolutely.
January 6 anybody right now, but pressure from the outside to change the system is the only way people who aren't billionaires can change the system. And you all have that ability, and I've seen it.
Absolutely right. And the,
MTLP is one of the most tragic stories I can imagine.
yeah,
Now they're apparently, garage selling all of the assets, and
that
it's,
wraps back around to what you were saying in the beginning of this interview here is whereas it very much seems that George Palikaris had the best of intentions for MMAT, and then
believe that.
over time, like you said, those guys with the key, some of the new members of the board of directors there forcefully kicked out George Palikaris as the CEO of the company, squandered away a lot of the money of MMAT, allowed what happened with MMTLP to continue and to not be, investigated further. Meanwhile, retail investors were the ones that are out there lobbying Congress, pushing the SEC, and doing everything that they can, being loud and putting eyes on this to pressure them. And then again, in the background, those guys with the key that basically stabbed, proverbially stabbed George and MMAT in the back, as well as the retail investors involved with that company. Now they've squandered away that money, and now they're fire selling what little bit is left of the assets there because the company's broke, so that they could continue to enrich themselves. And that is a very tragic thing overall. And I think that a lot of people are right to want to point the blame onto certain individuals. However, I think that they need to be more careful and look into it more in depth to figure out who the real bad guys are there and who are the ones that actually tried to help people. And I think that's really key as well.
Agreed. And that's one of the stories that I think needs to be told in depth. And as time goes by, I try to I try to allow that. Maybe, I'm not like a church going Christian or anything, but I do believe that there's an ebb and flow to the universe, and that um, because this did get slowed down, well, a lot of shit has happened with MMTLP in the last 8 months. It's a whole nother chapter
Yep.
or three added to this. And keep in mind, while y'all are fighting all these battles, here's Finner over here burying the bodies behind their office or whatever. They're literally just like, you know, and and that's just that's horrific. That whole idea. And again, the SEC is a revolving door. The presidents, I supported Obama when he ran. He gets into office. Next thing, I'd already written an article about Bush, about how many people who were ex Goldman Sachs employees were in his administration, and the number was like 13 or something. Smoke clears after Obama. Turns out his biggest investors were Wall Street, contributors. And oh, he's got 14 people from Goldman Sachs on his administration. He did some good things. Did he clean up Wall Street? Nope. Hell, they didn't even raise the minimum wage. What the fuck?
All talk.
You, yeah, yeah, and here we are again with this crazy election cycle that's happening right now. Um, I think I was never a Biden fan because Biden, frankly, did some horrible things as a senator back in the day. He's the one who dumped the student loan debt onto students to a large degree because he opened it up because his state is famous for being the home of all the credit card companies. They come through Delaware.
Yep.
They're Delaware second only to Nevada as a loosely run state when it comes to corporations. And he passed the legislation and helped push through the legislation that doesn't allow someone to write off their student loan debt in bankruptcy, but you can bankrupt companies all day long and get away with it. So point being, you can't really you can't really trust any politicians that much. I'm still a big Bernie fan only because he's just stood on his little hill for 45 years, and the hatred that the DNC, he spoke at the DNC. I don't even watch that crap. I'm like, I'm going to watch Bernie. I watched that. The next guy that speaks is, I can't remember his name, but he's a governor who's a billionaire. Really? A little tone deaf, where he says,
Hmm.
"Hey, I'm a real billionaire. Trump's not." And the whole audience goes wild. And I'm like, wait, wait, wait. Aren't we? Isn't inequality of wealth the problem here? Oh, you know,
It's only when
there's a
they're pointing the finger, it's a problem, but amongst themselves, it's no issue, right? Yeah.
no, no, but that's where we're at. And I would tell everybody, you're on the right track. And the unfortunate thing as an older civil rights activist chanted to the crowd one night in Ferguson at the end of a big event early on, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And
Absolutely right.
all the time, she's like, a bunch of young kids, lots of energy, didn't know how to focus it. Go home, get some rest. I'm going to need you rested because tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day, this fight goes on. It never ends. It never ends. So take the time for yourself. Don't let it kill you. You're not any good to us, even if you're so emotionally stressed out that you're not functioning properly. You're not good to any of us as an activist. So stop and take a break. Slow down if you have to, and understand that it's not your fault. These things that happen to us, it's not anybody's fault. You know.
And it's also not the end of the world. There's a lot that we can do about it, and a lot we can
Yep.
do to fight these things. We just have to continue to do it day in and day out, and
Yep.
not get burnt out. Not waste all your energy, burn all your energy in one day or one week, because we're here for a long time. Because this is a marathon. This is the kind of thing that financial reform, and in eliminating, or at least deterring a lot of the manipulation that's currently going on in markets, is a long game, and it's something that we have to do. It's not just like a choice as to, like, well, why do you do this? Why have you been doing this for so many years? It's because I think other people in America, the 99%, and our children and great grandchildren all deserve it. And I think it's a worthy cause as well. So I applaud you for continuing the fight now for decades. So thank you for that, Mark. Any final parting words here on the stream?
No, I mean, I think that sums it up. And again, I just want to. I always go back to. So here, this are two lessons that I give people as activists, and I did this with the young activists at George Floyd. If you're lucky enough that you raise enough noise and you make enough noise, and cameras get pointed at you, it's not about you. So that
Exactly.
fine line, I'm a political theater kind of guy, where I think sometimes we create these actions with the intent of getting people to pay attention and shine a camera on us. But when they shine the camera on you, if you're lucky enough to get that done, immediately turn it back to the cause because it's not about you.
There's
And
no
that
main
and that's why,
character here.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So
We're all in it
so that
together.
and then the other thing is that you're not alone in this. Bond with the people that you get along with. Allow for the other people to be in a parallel lane. If you don't get along with them, but you think they're doing the right thing, fine. it's great to wake up one day and go, wow, this other group did this over here, and while we were sleeping, that's a beautiful feeling to me,
Yeah.
you know. So and look out for each other and just love each other, because in the end we can't deteriorate to the point where we're, don't get me wrong, I will go toe to toe with some of these assholes, but we can't deteriorate to the point where we're as ugly and dark as they are. Just don't let that happen to you. It's really important, especially right now. So we'll get there. I would again, there's so much I know that everybody wants to say on this issue of us trying to, get the film moving forward. But my sole intent is to just get her to sign off. Just get her,
Hmm.
and if you think you can say, hey, we deserve this, sign off so this fucking project can go out and maybe contribute. Nothing's going to completely change it, but let it be another cog in the machinery that fixes, you know, the corrupt and broken market that we have right now.
Yeah, there's no
So,
one catalyst or thing that's going to completely change financial markets, but everything combined becomes a cog in the wheel in the machine of financial reform and doing this to better it for all of us as humanity. So I really appreciate you, Mark, and everything that you're doing. The film, Wall Street Conspiracy did a lot to open people's eyes, to help break them out of the matrix. It contributed a lot to Occupy Wall Street and getting this major movement on the news for the regular people to understand that this is a really big issue. And I think that this series as well will do much more than the movie, than other current existing films are doing to help people understand why this is a serious problem and that we can actually make a difference, because we have made differences so far, thanks to
yeah,
guys like you out there that continue to do this. So thanks again, Mark Faulk, and thank you everybody else for being here with us. Do me a favor and like, share, and send this to everyone that you know that might want to hear this. So thanks again, Mark. Appreciate you.
thank you, everybody. We appreciate all of you, and